Don't forget to like and subscribe. Ready for another deep dive. This time, we're diving into the Helium network.
Yeah.
It's a wireless network,
Uh-huh.
but it's got this really unique reward system.
Right.
And,
It's got some issues, shall we say.
yeah, and that's what we're going to unpack today.
It has run into some creative exploitation.
Well, so the Helium network uses something called proof of coverage rewards.
Yes.
And you can earn crypto just for providing wireless coverage with a hotspot.
So it's like a little mini cell tower, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the more coverage you provide, the more rewards you get.
Sounds pretty good on the surface, right?
Sounds amazing. But
But as with many things,
there's always a catch.
there is a catch. And in this case, the catch is this region in China called CN470.
Okay.
So imagine like a map of all these hotspots all over the world. And then suddenly you see this really dense cluster in CN470.
Okay.
Way more than you would expect for genuine coverage.
So that's our first clue that something fishy is going on.
That's right.
So we've got a potential hotspot for hotspot shenanigans.
Yeah, exactly.
What makes experts think that this isn't legit?
Well, one of the big red flags is the sheer volume of rewards that are flowing into CM470.
Okay.
So in a single epoch, which is how Helium measures these reward periods,
Okay.
CN470 raked in almost 10 million IoT tokens,
Wow.
which represented something like 13.6% of all proof of coverage rewards.
So that's a huge chunk.
It is.
And are you saying that the majority of this is suspected to be from gaming the system?
Yeah, over 86% in fact.
Wow.
And just visually, the evidence of that hotspot clustering is pretty damning.
Okay.
But proving it programmatically, that's where it gets a bit tricky.
Hmm.
So Helium uses what's called the Irregular Terrain Model, or ITM,
Okay.
to verify coverage.
I see.
But it's struggling to keep up with the tactics that are being used in CN470.
So it's like a digital detective trying to figure out if these hotspots are honestly providing coverage.
Exactly. It's looking at the terrain and all these other factors to determine if the hotspot location makes sense. Okay.
The people gaming this system, the gamers,
gamers.
they have become incredibly savvy.
Wow.
They're manipulating settings and finding loopholes to bypass that ITM scrutiny.
So it's like a digital arms race.
Yeah.
They're constantly finding new ways to exploit the system, and Helium is trying to stay one step ahead.
That's it.
What's the proposed solution then to this CN470 dilemma?
Well, there is a proposal called HIP 137,
Okay.
and it's basically proposing to cut CN470 off from the proof of coverage rewards pool entirely.
So just cut them off completely.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold move,
Yeah.
and it's causing quite a stir in the Helium community.
I bet imagine being a totally legitimate hotspot owner in CN470 and then suddenly no more rewards.
Right.
What are the ripple effects of that kind of drastic measure?
Well, that's a great question, and something we'll dig into a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about potentially a lot of collateral damage, right?
Yeah. It feels like a digital version of guilty by association.
You've got these honest hotspot owners in CN470 who are just trying to contribute to the network.
Right.
And suddenly they're being penalized for something that they haven't done.
And it's almost impossible to like surgically remove the bad actors without impacting those who are genuinely trying to play by the rules.
So beyond the immediate impact on hotspot owners, what about like the long-term consequences
Right.
for the Helium network as a whole?
Yeah.
Could this decision erode trust and discourage participation, especially in regions where maybe there's already some skepticism about fairness?
Yeah, I mean, decentralized networks rely heavily on trust and community involvement.
Right.
If people start to lose faith in the system's ability to be fair and equitable, then it could definitely have a chilling effect on participation.
It's like a delicate ecosystem. you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
If you disrupt one part of it,
Yeah.
the effects can ripple throughout the entire network.
Right. And that brings us to this broader challenge of decentralized governance. How do you manage a system where power is distributed
Right.
and there's no central authority to just make a decision or enforce rules?
It sounds almost like a paradox.
It is.
You want a system that's decentralized and open,
Yeah.
but then you also need some mechanisms in place to ensure that it's fair and prevent it from being abused.
Right. So that's the tightrope walk that the Helium community is facing.
Okay.
HIP 137 with its deny list is an attempt to address this specific problem.
Yeah.
But it highlights this ongoing struggle to balance autonomy with accountability in decentralized systems.
It's like a social experiment playing out in real time.
Yeah, it really is.
We're witnessing like the growing pains of a new way of organizing and governing ourselves. But even if HIP 137 passes, Doesn't it feel like a temporary fix?
Potentially.
Won't those who are gaming the system just find a new way to exploit the network?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Human ingenuity, especially when incentivized by profit,
Yeah.
is a very powerful force.
Yeah, for sure.
And as we've seen with the ITM,
Yeah.
those looking to exploit the system, they're constantly adapting
Right.
and finding new ways to stay ahead of the curve.
So is this just a never-ending game of cat and mouse?
It feels that way sometimes.
Is it even possible to create a decentralized network that's both incentivizing and resistant to gaming?
Well, it's certainly a challenge,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's an insurmountable one.
Okay.
I think the key is to embrace the dynamic nature of these systems and be prepared to constantly evolve and adapt.
So it's about learning from experiences like the CN470 situation and using that to improve the system,
Yeah,
like a feedback loop, where challenges lead to innovation and improvement.
precisely.
The helium community has shown that they're willing to address problems head-on
Mm-hmm.
and come up with creative solutions, HIP 137.
Yeah,
Whether it ultimately succeeds or not, it's a testament to that.
absolutely.
So it's about more than just this one proposal.
Right.
It's about this ongoing process of refining and strengthening decentralized systems
Yeah,
so that they can actually live up to their potential.
that's right.
But what does that future actually look like?
That's what we're going to talk about in the final segment of our deep dive today.
So we've spent all this time talking about proof of coverage in the helium network.
Yeah.
We've uncovered this whole gaming situation happening in CN470,
Mm-hmm.
and we've really grappled with this proposed solution, HIP 137.
Right.
But let's step back for a second and think big picture.
Okay.
What does all of this tell us about decentralized systems in general?
Yeah, this situation with helium, I think it's like a microcosm of what we're seeing
Right.
with decentralization across lots of different industries.
Yeah.
This shift in power dynamics,
Yeah.
away from big centralized institutions and towards networks where participants are distributed.
So instead of relying on a single entity to kind of control everything,
Right.
we're moving toward a more like collaborative community-driven model.
Exactly.
That sounds pretty radical.
Oh.
What are the potential benefits of that kind of shift?
Well, imagine a world where individuals have way more control over their data,
Okay.
their finances, their participation in online platforms,
Yeah.
Decentralized systems offer the promise of more transparency, more autonomy, more resilience.
So it's like taking back some of that power that's being concentrated in the hands of a few large corporations and institutions,
That's right.
and giving individuals and communities more agency to shape their own digital destinies.
Yeah, that's the idealistic vision.
Yeah.
And it's definitely appealing.
Yeah, sounds great. But as we've seen with helium,
Yeah,
decentralization isn't a magic bullet.
not at all.
It's got its own challenges
It does.
and its own complexities.
For sure.
Like we talked about the potential for gaming and
Yeah.
exploitation,
Yeah.
the difficulty of actually getting everybody to agree in a decentralized system,
Absolutely.
and the need for totally new governance models that can effectively balance individual freedom with collective responsibility.
You've got.
It's not enough to just distribute power.
Mm-hmm.
We need to create systems that are actually secure
Yeah.
and equitable
Uh-huh.
and sustainable.
That's right.
That requires a lot of careful thought,
It does.
a lot of experimentation, and a lot of collaboration.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the technology itself.
Right.
It's about how we as a society are going to design, govern, and interact within these systems.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point.
What are some key takeaways from the Helium network that listeners can apply to their understanding of these decentralized systems?
Well, one of the big ones is being aware of the potential for unintended consequences.
Okay.
When you create a system with financial incentives, you have to think about how people are going to act.
Yeah.
People are going to find ways to maximize their gains,
Yeah.
and sometimes that comes at the expense of others.
Right. So we need to be really thoughtful about how we design those incentives in the first place
Absolutely.
and anticipate those potential loopholes and vulnerabilities
That's right.
that could be exploited.
Yeah.
Another key takeaway is that decentralization doesn't mean a lack of governance. It just means that governance looks different.
Right.
It's often more distributed
Yeah.
and more participatory.
And that requires a new set of tools, new processes,
Yeah.
new ways of thinking.
So it's about shifting from that top-down command and control approach to a more collaborative bottom-up model
Yeah.
where everybody has a stake in the success of the system.
Exactly.
And then finally, the Helium network, I think, really highlights the importance of being adaptable.
Yes.
and being resilient.
Yeah.
These decentralized systems are always changing, and we have to be prepared to embrace change,
Right.
learn from our mistakes,
Absolutely.
and continuously improve.
Yeah. It's about seeing those challenges as opportunities for growth
Yes.
and opportunities for innovation.
The future of decentralized systems is still being written,
It is.
and we all have a role to play in figuring out what that looks like.
Absolutely. The future is decentralized.
Yeah.
But it's up to us to determine what that future will look like.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of decentralized systems.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope you learned a thing or two and are feeling inspired to join the conversation about the future of technology and society. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the